5, so we can probably get started. I want to welcome everybody to this event this Monday morning at 9 o'clock. I really appreciate everybody that can be here with us today. My name is Carrie Kelly, and I'm Executive Director of the Arizona Association for Economic Development. And I have two very special guests with us. One is Joel Millman, and the other is Trevor Stokes. So I wanted to pass it off to Joel, and he can take it away from here.
Oh, thank you, Carrie. And Joel Millman with the Pinal County Economic and Workforce Development Department, and also Arizona at Work Pinal County. And just like to welcome everybody. This is the first ever virtual Workforce Symposium from the Arizona Association for Economic Development, and follow up to our previously scheduled April 14th in-person event. But we're excited that we were able to retain who was going to be our featured speaker at lunch during that event. And so without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Trevor Stokes. Just briefly, Trevor's the president of the Partnership for Workforce Innovation, which is a specialty firm providing consultation and support regarding workforce policy, labor market analysis, career pathways design, economic development strategies, and industry sector partnerships. And for those of you who've had the pleasure in the past of listening to Trevor present, you know what to expect. And for those of you who have not, Trevor's one of those special people that we really admire and welcome. And without any further ado, with all due respect and looking forward to his presentation, Trevor Stokes.
Thank you very much, Joel, and thank you, Carrie. And man, it is good to see a lot of names on the participant list that I haven't seen or talked to in a long time. I miss you all. I miss being able to see you in person and doing these events that we had kind of gotten used to, but we are mastering a new normal now, right? We are learning how to take these kinds of exercises into a virtual environment. I think we are all probably getting good at it. I know that I have, Joel made a comment earlier about, my formal appearance today, having a tie on and everything just for a camera. But, I was thinking I'm kind of an old school guy. I have always had sort of a formal approach to those kind of things. I wore a suit every day for like 13 years, so it was a kind of a habit to me. The suit is just the uniform of business, right? That's what you do if you're going to be doing business, because it's not something extra that you do. That is just the basics, right? So now in this new normal, I have mastered the new standard, which is shirt and tie on the top, Scooby-Doo boxers on the bottom. I will not demonstrate. You'll just have to take my word for it that is the new dress code, right? I have been, this whole situation's been going on for so long now. I have washed my hands so vigorously so many times that my cheat notes from my 1986 history exam are showing up on my palms at this point. So I will obviously make a few thoughts today, a few observations about the impact that we are having from this current crisis that we're in the middle of. I trust every one of you are safe and doing well. I know some of the challenges that we face have to do a lot more with the quarantine, the lockdown, the isolation that we've had to implement in response to the virus. Maybe more so than the virus itself. So I'm going to be sharing some things today about the impact of some of these things on our labor market. I'm also going to share some information on demographics. And let me tell you what my big concern is right now. Right now, it is May of 2020. We have been in lockdown. We've been in our own homes with our own families for a very long time now. I remember thinking at the outset of this, a few weeks in isolation alone with my family, what could go wrong, right? But I would like to remind you that that is how the shining started. So we've been in isolation for a while now. We have spent this time alone together. Here's an impact I suspect may come in our demographics, right? We have spent this time alone. I am wondering if around 9 months from now, we may see a baby boom across the country and here in Arizona. But think about this, if we have a baby boom in early 2021, then maybe 13 years from then, maybe 2034, ladies and gentlemen, we may see the rise of the quarantines. I had to pause a minute, let that one sink in. The rise of the quarantines. We're hopefully coming. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel on this whole situation. That's what I am hoping. That's what I'm holding on to. I can tell you that for my entire life, I imagined that the apocalypse would come with zombies and anarchy, not with a home office and a lack of toilet paper. So we are coming toward the end of it, I hope. Let's look at some of the things that I think we are experiencing right now and what we may look for as we go forward from here. So as I mentioned, or as Joel mentioned, I do a lot of different things. I have worked for the state of Arizona for around 6 years, hung my own shingle out second half of last year, and started working as a consultant. And I've had the privilege of working in a lot of really great initiatives all over the country, as well as here in Arizona. I will be sharing a couple of things with you toward the tail end of this presentation that I think you may find interesting. I want to share some best practices, some innovative things that I have seen coming from other places around the country. So here's what this presentation is going to look like. I want to take a little bit different approach than what you are accustomed to getting from me. I know if you've seen my presentations, you're probably accustomed to me putting large screens full of numbers up at one time, talking through tables of data and graphics, things like that. And of course, I will do just a little bit of that. But what I really want to do, where I really want to focus, is looking at the labor market through the lens of job postings. And this is a little bit different than what I typically do. But because we are in the middle of a situation that is impacting us in different ways day to day, we need to be able to look at a data source that reflects those day-to-day changes, not just one that is published on a monthly or quarterly basis. So while those perspectives are immensely valuable, we're going to take a peek at the other side of that elephant and see what the job postings that are online right now from Arizona employers are telling us about the current and future state of our workforce. So we kind of got through that introduction. I'll share a couple of housekeeping things with you here. I did forget to put this in here. You have your phones with you, I assume, so don't put them away completely. I'm going to have you do something, if you would. I want you to look at that number, 22333, and I want you to break it out right now and text this phrase to that number, if you would. This is just a way that we can interact with each other. Text all one string, Trevor Stokes 383. That's going to open up my room in Poll Everywhere, and that's going to allow you to answer some questions in real time as we go through this presentation. If you've used Poll Everywhere, I actually love that technology. I think it's great. I think it allows us to do some real interaction beyond just you listening to me talk, right? So we will have a period for questions and answers. At the end of this, I am assuming that we will probably not be able to get to all of the questions and comments that people have. So so we will use that technology to make that happen. Some of you are asking for the phrase that we need to text, and I just put it in the chat window. It's Trevor Stokes 383, all one word. Just text that in there, and that will get you connected to the Poll Everywhere room that we've reserved for this meeting. All right. So with that, I want to give you a quick warm up. Let's look at this kind of a question. This is just to get you engaged first thing on a Monday morning. We've been locked up for a while. Somebody tell me real quickly, what do you think is the one thing, a cultural attraction, a sporting event, a restaurant? What is it that you have missed the most during this lockdown? I asked my teenage daughter this morning, and she did not hesitate. She said, getting my nails done. She said, that's what I have missed. So you can go to a website if you prefer. You see it on your screen. You can text to 22333, and what you are putting into that text box is showing up in our word cloud right now. What are the priorities? What have people been missing? People have been missing family. People have been missing grandparents. Somebody said they're missing hugging, shopping. Somebody may have been answering for me because they said they missed baseball, movies, gatherings. Somebody else was reading my mind because they said beer. Sports, finally seeing some of those coming back. Missing going out for coffee. Absolutely. Missing being out in public. Haircuts. Miss the time with your kids. But it looks like, above all, it looks like what you are saying are your top responses seems to be coming in as family and friends and travel. Right? Look at what you're saying about this. Hugging, family, and friends. This suspected was going to be the answer to this, and I kind of asked this question intentionally because at the end of this, I want to make a point that that ability to connect on a human level is not just our a personal consideration, it's a professional one as well. And we're going to look at that a little bit as we go through here. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. Let me ask you one more question. We'll do this one a little bit differently instead of a word cloud. Think about all the different people, the organizations, communities. Who's impressed you during this crisis? It's really easy as human beings to assign blame. It's really easy to look for what went wrong. Tell me what you think has gone right. Who's done well? Same thing to respond. Text your answer to that same room. You don't need to text the code word again. Just text it to 22333 in that same chat window that you had, or go to the website and enter it there. But what do you think? What people, organizations, communities, or other entities have impressed you the most during this crisis? It is an interesting question, I think. You'll let your answers come in there real quickly. Bear with me just a second. And let's see, I apologize. I'm having a technical issue showing you the results, but I am going to have to just tell you what I'm seeing on my screen. I apologize about that. I thought I had this all planned out. The responses that I'm getting, you are saying a lot about healthcare workers. Some of you are talking about some of our public leadership, local leadership. A lot of you are talking about our first responders. A lot of you, I'm looking at 7, 8, 9, maybe 11 of you still coming in, talking about teachers and school administrators. You're talking about a lot of folks who have done things well as we go through this, right? Some of you talked about the gyms that are still doing virtual events. You seem to be talking about people who have found a way to innovate, who have found a way to move forward in spite of the challenges that we face, right? And that seems to be the theme of what we're seeing here. I apologize for not being able to show you those answers in real time, but let me go on into this next section of this discussion. I want to give you a quick look at where we were, right, and what was going on when we ran into the issues that we have going on. There were a lot of things happening that were, I think, moving in the right direction. There were some trends that we were watching, or that I was watching, that I was really excited about. We had seen a long-term trend in our unemployment rate moving in the right direction. One of the things that I've personally been involved in for several years now is trying to find a solution around the issue of labor force participation. That's the percentage of our people who are eligible for work who are actually participating in the workforce. They're either employed or unemployed, not having simply dropped out of our workforce and found a new way to exist without participating in it. That number had been trending downward for literally decades. What we had finally seen in the last few years was progress in the other direction in terms of the percentage of our people who are participating in the labor force. That metric, you will see here in a minute in some detail, we have at least temporarily lost the gains that we had made over the course of several years in terms of getting more folks to take advantage of the opportunities available in our labor market. Wage growth was moving upward, and this is something that I wonder if it has not made a lot of headlines as the cause of our current situation. But we've been making real efforts, both in our state and in a lot of others, to move our level of educational attainment. And we, according to the last release from the Census Bureau and the American Community Survey data, had actually made measurable progress on this front. Largest gain in terms of educational attainment that we have seen in Arizona in more than a decade. So that was some good news. However, here is a quick snapshot. Give you some quick information about our labor force statistics and in both Arizona and the United States. Now, here's what I want to show you about this. In the chart that you're looking at, Arizona's data is released in March. These are the March numbers in Arizona. The reason I put it side by side with the national numbers is because I want to show you what happened in the national level when they reported their April numbers that Arizona has not yet reported. So there is a very good chance that what we are going to see when our April numbers are released could be a significantly downward trend in some of these key econometric indicators. As I mentioned, our unemployment rate had ticked up a full percentage point from 4.5 to 5.5 when we moved from February to March. However, in the national level, what we saw going from March to April was a hockey stick level change in which that unemployment rate skyrocketed upward in April. This second line, when we talk about the labor force participation rate, this is something that surprised me a little and something that definitely concerns me. All right. And that is the fact that our labor force participation rate, I expected to actually go up a little. That is what I thought I would see here as more people found that they needed to apply for unemployment benefits who were previously not in the workforce. They would be counted in the workforce numbers at that point. That's what I expected to see. So I did not think that we were going to see a lot of changes in terms of the number of people participating in our labor force, but we are, and we are seeing that that number move downward to some degree. So the a couple of other things that I will point out to you come from our demographics numbers. When we look at our demographics data, these don't get reported as frequently as our labor force statistics in a lot of cases, but they are still worth looking at to some degree. In this conversation, and I apologize, I'm stumbling just a little bit. I'm having a little bit of connection issue here. If you're not seeing my screen, bear with me for just a minute. I'm going to get it moving here in just a second. So our labor force numbers, we're seeing, I'm predicting that we will see, some possibly startling numbers when we get to April. I think, however, that there are reasons to suspect that our recovery is going to be fast and significant as well. All right. So, yep, I really do apologize. Bear with me just 1 second. Let me get this fixed. Instead of stumbling through it, I want to make sure you see this. There we go. Believe that you should be seeing it now.
Nothing yet.
All right. So again, I apologize about that. Carrie, can you just confirm for me that you're seeing the demographic statistics?
No, there's no share screen shown.
Not sharing it.
There we go.
How about that?
There we go.
All right, folks, again, I apologize. I will get caught up here real quickly. So some of the things that that I track on a regular basis include the prevalence of people who are living in poverty and our educational attainment levels that I mentioned earlier. Here's what I found interesting when we looked at those labor force statistics. I looked at the change from January to March when we looked at the state, and from January to April when we looked at the United States. We saw that our unemployment rate actually increased a full point in Arizona. It increased in spite of the fact that I put a negative sign there, more than 3 points in the United States. Our labor force participation rate is down 3 points. This one is a big deal. Our employment to population ratio is actually down more than 10 points. And we have 8.1 million people nationally who have stopped participating in our labor force. That is a big, scary number, right? Even if that is temporary, that is a massive disruption to our labor market. This is what I was talking about when I mentioned those national trends in our labor market. Our unemployment rate moved dramatically from March to April. Our labor force participation rate, which had been seeing its best numbers in a very long time, dropped dramatically in a very short period of time. Again, because that drop is so dramatic, you have to hope that our recovery will have at least some degree of that same trajectory moving back up. We hope. That's an optimistic view. The employment to population ratio, this is the percentage of your people who are actually employed. Currently, our population 16 years and older we look at a rate of employment of around 51%. When we look at the total number of unemployed people across the country, you can see that the change was absolutely drastic, moving from just over 7 million unemployed people to more than 23 million in the space of less than a month. There are pressures and challenges that is going to put on our workforce system. It's going to put it on our economic development structures. And we want to have some strategies in place that will allow us to address these in an informed and intentional way. All right. And so that's what the balance of this conversation, I hope, is going to be about today, is what does it look like as we move forward in this kind of an environment. So in order to show you some of these trends that are happening right now, I want to go into something different. I want to show you what has been going on in our unemployment insurance claims. This is an analysis of the 5 weeks, starting with the week that ended on April 4th, going through the week that ended on May the 2nd. And I want to show you numbers released by the Arizona Office of Economic Opportunity about the characteristics of the people who have been filing new claims for unemployment insurance. Over that 5-week period in Arizona, we've had more than 200,000 new unemployment insurance claims. And a lot of those claims are centered in our population, which has a limited level of educational attainment. So the lower your level of education, the more likely you were to have been impacted by this crisis in the last few weeks. When we looked at where unemployment insurance claimants came from in terms of their most recent employment, we see that a lot of the devastation has been happening within our healthcare and social assistance area. I have a friend of mine who offered an observation that only we could have screwed up so badly that in the middle of a global health pandemic, our healthcare employment gets decimated, right? But that is actually the case, and I'll show you some specifics within these data as we go forward as well. Our lower tier jobs in terms of educational requirements, earning potential, things like that, in accommodation and food service, retail trade, and administrative and waste services follow on that first data point showing you where these unemployment claims came from. Specific jobs, largest category for people who have filed these unemployment claims in the last 5 weeks come from office and administrative support occupations, followed by food preparation and serving. These are the people who are filing these unemployment claims over the last 5 weeks. So let me look at something new here. I told you, I teased this, that we were going to look at job postings data. I'm going to share with you this public resource. So what I'm going to go into in a minute is a subscription service. It's something that I use, that I pay for, that I use as part of my work to do detailed analysis of job postings. However, my friends at Economic Modeling Specialists International have put up, for the duration of this crisis, a free public resource that allows you some limited access to job postings analysis of your own. The URL for the site with the screenshot I just shared is very, very long and cumbersome. I went ahead and shortened it for you so you can use this one. But you can access this for free at the URL that I have on the screen. When you go to that site, you will be able to look for the current number of job postings and see the percentage changes over the month and over the year, and you can filter for specific industries, occupations, and geographies. So this is something I like to share, especially if I'm talking directly to job seekers, right? Job seekers are, in many cases, very scared They're terrified of the current situation. They don't know when or if they will be able to get back to the workforce. I like to point out the fact that we have more than 10 million jobs being advertised right now. In Arizona, that number is well north of 100,000. There are still a lot of jobs being posted. And again, this is just one side of the elephant, but it is a side of the elephant that provides some reason for optimism, right? Total postings in the United States and in Arizona, while we are down roughly a quarter in terms of volume of online job postings that we see today compared to the previous year, this date a year ago, we are still seeing a significant number of online job postings in Arizona. When I tracked the number of job postings, you do see within this shaded area, which is the roughly the beginning of our current crisis, a dramatic downtick in the number of online job postings that we are tracking, right? But there are a number of things that I want to show you about what we are seeing from these job postings. For the entire county of Maricopa, I took not just a day, but I took an entire 30-day total of job postings in Maricopa County. And I wanted to show you the way that things have changed from this date last year to today. And when I'm saying today, I mean yesterday when I did my final check to get your most current numbers. These numbers will be different every day that you look at it. The largest number of job postings across the state are for registered nurses. We are down more than a quarter in terms of the total number of job postings for nurses from a year ago. Now, that is something that I've discussed with a lot of people. A lot of people find that surprising. As I mentioned earlier, we're in the middle of a global health crisis. How can we possibly have a lower demand for nurses than we had a year ago? Keep in mind that a lot of our health services and health-related services have been shut down. In Arizona, around 1 out of every 11 nurses work in the educational industry, not in healthcare industries. We have nurses who work for a lot of other industries which have been closed down, and a lot of hospitals, doctors' offices, other businesses that employ nurses have shut down or limited operations, and that has impacted demand for our registered nurses. I think that as soon as we reopen a lot of these industries, that we will see this demand rebound in dramatic fashion. Same thing for some of the other occupations. What I put on the screen are the ones with the largest total number of postings that were online as of last night, as well as the percentage change they have seen since last year. A couple of the industries of note, again, industries are types of business. So I wanted to point out what we've seen for some industries that are very important here in Arizona, and you'll see the decline from this date last year in that last or rightmost column. So a couple of things that you're able to do with these job postings analysis systems is to look specifically at skills. And as a workforce practitioner, that is what interests me very often, right? I want to know what should our education and workforce development systems be focused on right now? What should we be looking at? So I wanted to find some skills that are mentioned frequently in these job postings and that have not declined significantly from the level of demand that they had last year, right? So what are some skills that are not necessarily going off the cliff as we look at today's job postings compared to last year's, right? Microsoft Office is one that we have seen very small decline in. You'll see it here in a minute when I wrap this up. I'll give you a spoiler alert. Out of all the technical skills that are mentioned in all the job postings across the entire country, the single most requested technical skill of any kind is Microsoft Office. Also in the top 5 is specifically Microsoft PowerPoint. That is very frequently mentioned in our job postings. Another skill that we often see, one that I love, is Excel. You can see that even on my mug, I love spreadsheets. I used to teach Excel, and a customer of mine got me that mug, which I use every day. But Microsoft Excel is another one of those technological skills that have not seen a significant decline in demand in terms of today's job postings. Agile software development is actually mentioned in more job postings right now than it was on this date a year ago. Database administration is a skill that is staying relatively stable as we look at these job postings data. Project management, while it has declined, the decline has not been significant, and I think that you will see the nature of the demand for project management skills evolving. A lot of demand when you go into these specific openings is built around the idea of, can you manage a virtual environment? Can you manage a distributed team? Because that's a big part of our new normal. Collaboration is mentioned in literally thousands of job postings. Auditing is mentioned in a surprising number of job postings, and it's been mentioned more frequently than it was on this date a year ago. Customer service, even though our retail establishments, many have seen this decline and a lot of them are closed or limited, they still mention customer service in those advertisements, right? I believe that ability to continue providing the customer service experience, providing that human level of interaction, regardless of the technology or the context in which you're delivering it, is always going to be a business priority. So those customer skills continue to be mentioned regularly. Merchandising is also mentioned. That is one that I don't have an explanation for. I do not know with a lot of retail establishments why that is mentioned, but it is exactly the kind of thing that I would love to explore. Let me tell you what I am saying right now. I talk to different groups of job seekers, and I tell them that they should develop critical skills. And what I mean by that are these skills that are mentioned most frequently in our job postings across the entire United States, as well as across the entire state of Arizona. The single most requested skill of any kind, personal, interpersonal, technical, the single most requested competency is oral and written communication skills. What I find interesting is that number 2 on that list is integrity. As a public system that develops talent, as our educational system, as our workforce development system, is integrity the kind of thing that we can teach? Is that the kind of thing we can develop in our workforce? Is an understanding of what integrity means and what it looks like in the world of work, is that something that we can teach or that we can integrate into our training and job readiness programs? I submit that if it's being mentioned in thousands of job postings every day, that it may be a competency important enough for us to figure out how to address, right? So I wanted to look at these skills, but I also wanted to filter to look at just the technical skills. And as I mentioned, Microsoft Office, the single most requested technical competency. I used kind of a broad definition to come up with this query, but I found it interesting that bilingual is a characteristic that was mentioned in thousands of jobs. Folks who are fluent in other languages, that is not a barrier to be overcome. That is an asset to be leveraged, right? SQL, tractor trailers, software development, you will see the rest of the technical skills that were most frequently mentioned in those job postings. When I specifically looked at certifications, these are the most mentioned certifications and credentials of any kind in our job postings as of last night. I always find it interesting because it is true regardless of the state or the level at which I do a job postings analysis. The single most requested credential of any kind is always a driver's license. If you've heard me speak, you may have heard me go off on a tangent about what in the heck drives this trend among our youngest generation of not wanting to get a driver's license. I find that odd. The day I turned 16, I was literally sitting on the steps of the DMV waiting to go in and take the test to get my license. But that's maybe not necessarily the case for a lot of our youngest folks right now. But there is a professional consideration there. Driving is still a big part of the way our business community operates. So let me share just the last couple of things here. I was having a conversation with my friend Steve from Newbridge, and he helped me summarize kind of a few thoughts. I've read no fewer than 13, I went back and counted them up when I was thinking about this, 13 different pieces, articles, columns, posts that have focused on this point, that a lot of people who are thought leaders in this space suspect that a lot of our companies are simply not going to go back to an office-based workspace. They have figured out that there are cost savings to be had by managing a distributed workforce. They have been concerned for years about how to ensure data security, how to ensure network security if they had a distributed workforce, but they have been forced to figure that out in order to keep functioning during this current situation, right? And because they fear, basically just for the health of themselves and their workforce, they are thinking through how and whether they can reconfigure their workspace to make it more conducive to a healthy work environment. And it is always on the radar when you are talking about business strategy, that if you require people to come back into an office in which they become sick, you could possibly be exposing yourself to liability. It's a big conversation going on right now, but it is absolutely something that's in the forefront of our thoughts right now. So my thanks to Steve over at Newbridge for helping me kind of summarize my thoughts on this. A couple of things that I've been thinking about. When we're talking about the intersection between economic development and workforce development post-crisis, I think there is going to be a long-term effect. I think some things that have happened now are going to have permanent effects, but I suspect that a lot of other things will return to somewhat pre-crisis normals. There's going to be a mixture of trends going forward, right? The way that we address this, I hope, will be innovative. I hope that we will commit to being nimble. I love the fact that organizations like the Arizona Association for Economic Development is hosting a Workforce Symposium, that we're getting involved in the conversation around workforce because we know it is absolutely a critical component of the economic development and economic prospects of the communities that we serve, right? So let me share a couple of innovative strategies, ways that I have seen some other organizations with whom I work addressing the future and addressing this idea of the intersection between economic development and workforce development. You know, I tend to share these overviews of these kinds of initiatives. I don't think any of you have heard me talk about these. These are all hot off the presses, brand new initiatives in which I've been involved over the last year. The state of New Mexico, I just finished this project. You can Google it, find some overviews. But career and technical education is and should be a major component of the economic development strategies of any community. That's my personal opinion. That's my pitch for CTE. I'm a big champion of career and technical education, the kind of programs that prepare students, either young or adult, for specific careers. In New Mexico, their CTE department engaged me to do a series of town hall type meetings. We did a detailed labor market analysis for each of their 10 CTE districts across the state, and then they convened economic development and business and community leaders in a half-day session to review the findings of the labor market, talk about what they are seeing in their daily activities, and build community level priorities and strategies for how to make career and technical education a primary component of their economic development strategy going forward. The new Perkins 5 legislation, which is actually the Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act, requires something called a comprehensive local needs assessment. It did not require everything that New Mexico did, but in order to be proactive, to do more than was required, that's the approach that New Mexico took. Hugely successful program, and I applaud what they did. Economic development and business intermediary organizations are getting involved in helping to write workforce strategies. And I absolutely applaud, I love when these organizations lay aside the kind of thinking that says, that's not our lane, let's not get involved in education and workforce development, and instead make that comprehensive, holistic approach that can actually lead to success. Some of our local workforce areas are engaged in absolutely innovative, groundbreaking ideas that I love, including the Workforce Quality Initiative, which is going to go, especially in our rural communities, to our cities and towns, to go to those local communities and establish workforce-related goals, as well as ways to track progress against those goals. We have, as I shared, labor market information released by the state. It is not as specific to the local communities as we would like, and these initiatives are helping to address that. And finally, there's a trend that I have seen of nonprofit and community-based organizations who have always been social services focused organizations, realizing that if they want to make their impact on an individual's life sustainable, make it long-term, at some point after having dealt with crisis interventions, you hopefully can move those individuals into some kind of a career position or some level of self-sustainability that will enable them to lock in those gains and improve their lives for the long term, right? So as I mentioned, I talk with a lot of job seekers. Some of the things that I tell them is that I reassure them that this is not going to last forever, that the nature of work may change. Collaboration technologies are going to become an even bigger part of our work days than they have been in the past. And that number 4 is something I've been saying for years. We've been worried about the encroachment of automation. I see some similarities in the risks posed by our move toward virtual environments. And I suspect that human skills, the ability to connect on a human level, is going to be your hedge against the approach of those types of factors, right? So to wrap up, as I mentioned, I love the fact that economic development organizations and business intermediaries like the AAED, like Chambers of Commerce, are getting involved in our conversation about workforce development and education. And I hope that at your community, you will invest in your educational system, you'll invest in your talent development assets, until that becomes the single most attractive characteristic of your community, right? And with that, I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to turn this back over to Joel to see if we have any questions to take before we completely wrap this up. Before I do that, because I know some folks tend to jump off when we start Q&A, I do want to say thank you very much. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today, to be with you, see a lot of names that I haven't gotten to talk to in a long time. So I really do appreciate that, the opportunity, and I look forward to being able to see you all again in person. So thank you very much. Joel, what do we have?
Hey, Trevor, we have one specific question here. Is the data, when you were showing the data on the slide regarding industries for Arizona, the question is the data you are showing by industry for Arizona from MC resource or another resource?
That is from the MZ resource, right? So you can't get it quite that way through the free dashboard that I showed. But I also have a paid subscription that allows me to go in and do custom queries and things like that on those data. So you can get some of that data from the free dashboard that I shared. The others are coming from the MZ subscription-based service.
Great. And we're not showing any other specific questions, so I just want folks to know that if you have anything that comes up, we'll get them to Trevor. But real quick, Trevor, I know we have a minute, but on the industry and on the specific occupations that you showed trending, you had shared with me last week, are there any new occupations that that may have been more prominent or rising to the top that you had shared, like event planning and things like that, just maybe
right.
Existing occupations that take a different twist?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Joel. One of the things that I've been doing when I talk to job seekers recently is this. I tell them, you know, we have an interruption right now. At some point, what you need to have in your mind is the story you're going to tell about that interruption when you go to a new opportunity. When you're sitting in front of a hiring decision maker, what are you going to tell them you did with this time you had when you were not working or working limited hours or working in a new environment? Can you tell the story that says, I invested in myself? Here's how I did it. So when I talk to those job seekers, I tell them, put together your pandemic story. Make sure that if you're unemployed right now, you can tell the story about what you did with this situation when you get back to that point of looking for a new opportunity. And some of the things that I focus on with them is the fact that collaboration technologies are going to be so much a part of our new normal. One of the things I recommended to those folks was go out and get a certification in online meeting facilitation. Organizations like Zoom, GoToMeeting, Cisco, they actually have training and certifications available to demonstrate or validate your skills in using their technologies to facilitate an online meeting. If you're able to go back into the workforce in an office or administrative role and say, hey, while we were disengaged, while I was laid off or had lost my job, I invested in myself and became certified as an online meeting planner. That is a value proposition that is going to resonate more in the future. It's going to resonate more after this situation than it did before. That, on a more technical level, if you can manage networking and security in a technical environment for a distributed team, I suspect that there is a significantly higher level of demand for that skills profile now than there was just a few months ago.
Great. So we have a question, and then we may head towards wrapping up, but want to get this in. How can the Arizona Career Readiness Credential help with the recovery? You talked about credentials.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of you know that I was involved in creating the Arizona Career Readiness Credential. It's available through all of your Arizona at Work partners. the ACRC validates an individual's skill in both academic and personal and interpersonal areas. So we saw that communication skills is the single most requested competency of our current job postings. So, you know, we can't overstate how important it is. The ACRC is a way of proving to an employer that you have at least a cognitive command of those types of skills, right? So, as I tell job seekers all the time, developing skills helps you do a job. Developing skills does not help you get a job. Being able to validate skills, that's what helps you get a job, right? Have some sort of credential. If you're going to do the training, sit for the assessment, do whatever it takes to earn that credential, some sort of portable statement about the fact that you have mastered the skills in these areas that matter to employers.
Great, thanks. And I know folks are starting to get on with their day here, but also squeeze one more in here. Or what are the subscription services that you have?
Okay, good question. So I used to use a service called Talent Neuron. I ended up leaving that one in favor of EMSI, Economic Modeling Specialists, because I thought they had a better system with more reliable data. And so I went to that. That gives me both traditional labor market information and job postings analysis. I also use JobsEQ from Chimera Economics in DC. Those are the main ones that I use. But those of you who know me know that I'm kind of a control freak. So to be honest, I usually end up going to the source data and building my own databases and doing my own analysis anyway. But those are my two favorite subscription services.
Great. And as everybody, I just wanted to thank everybody on behalf of the Arizona Association for Economic Development, especially thank you again, Trevor, for taking the time to present. Trevor's contact information is on the screen right now. So any other questions you may have, feel free to contact them directly. And just to let you know that we will be planning a second AAED virtual Workforce Symposium in the coming weeks. We're putting the final touches on it, and so watch your emails for that invite. And I'm going to turn it over to Carrie now. And I just want to thank everybody once again. Carrie?
Thank you, Trevor and Joel. We're really excited and happy to have you, and excited to have everybody on the call as well. I think we had over 100 participants, and that's really exciting for our first virtual Workforce Symposium. We will have this webinar as well as hopefully Trevor's presentation up on our website, so we'll send out an email with those links later on. On behalf of Arizona Association for Economic Development, I want to thank you for joining us, and I hope that you have a wonderful week. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
So we're off?
So, bye, Trevor. Or bye, Joel. Trevor's gone. Thanks so much.
Okay.
We'll talk soon.
Yeah, that's fine. And I'll follow up with the follow-up.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye.